Railways are no stranger to having assets stolen from them. Notable thefts include stealing gold and money from moving trains, but even things like rails and signalling equipment have been taken by criminals wanting to make a quick penny. Robbery of railway property still happens to this day, some thefts more egregious than others, but none may be more bizarre than the man who was tricked into stealing an entire railway station. Built in 1847 by the Yorkshire and Lancashire Railway, Cleckheaton Central Station stood as a hub for both passengers and goods for many years. It served the people of West Yorkshire about as well as any other station in the world, and had its own fair share of notable accidents, including a handful of runaway trucks derailing and smashing a butcher's shop. But aside from that, was pretty much like any other station in the country. It was absorbed into the LNWR, then the LMS, before finally becoming part of the British Railways system in 1948. By 1965, the station was closed to passengers as part of the beaching cuts, and by 1969 was closed completely. At this point, half of the station had been demolished, with only the platforms, main station building, and a few sections of track remaining. British Railways, likely busy organising the demolition and disposal of many other stations, left Cleckheaton in its partially standing state for another 2 years before finally getting round to organising a team to pull down the remaining structure. In 1971, a demolition company from Leeds was contracted to remove the rest of the station, with British Railways paying them £2,382 for the job and giving them permission to sell off the materials for profit. However, when they finally arrived at the site, they found the station they'd been contracted to remove was already gone. Both the demolition team and British Railways were baffled as to how a station could just vanish, and so an investigation was launched. A short while later, the culprit was found, a 33-year-old demolition contractor from Dewsbury by the name of Reginald Sedwick. 24 tons of material had already been removed from the site, including stone, timber, metal, rails, sleepers, buffers, station benches, and more. And so Sedwick was taken to court in 1972, charged with effectively stealing Cleckheaton Station. Sedwick, however, denied that he had stolen the station, and claimed that he was in fact contracted to demolish it. He stated that he'd been contacted by a Mr. Watson on behalf of Northern Sites Development in Leeds, offering him £400 to knock down the station for British Railways and letting him sell off the materials for extra profit. With the materials of the station having a combined value of roughly £600, Sedwick took on the job and paid Watson a £100 bond for the contract, spending an extra £200 hiring the equipment needed, and then over the course of the next 3 weeks, tearing down and selling off the station. Naturally, investigators tried to find this Mr. Watson and Northern Sites Development. However, it turned out that neither he nor the company existed, and rather conveniently, Sedwick had lost the receipt for the bond he'd paid. After finding this out, the prosecution naturally believed that Sedwick was telling a fat pack of lies and had made up Watson as a scapegoat, stating, quote, "What the case really comes to is that this man, last August, in effect, stole Cleckheaton Station." Sedwick, however, stuck firmly to his story, admitting that he did demolish the station, but reaffirming that he was contracted to do so by this mysterious Mr. Watson. After 2 days in court, the jury eventually found Sedwick not guilty of stealing Cleckheaton Station, and accepted that, quote, "he pulled the station down in good faith." Once the case was closed, Sedwick said he'd continue searching for Mr. Watson, claiming he'd been conned and that, quote, "he owes the £100 bond I paid him and £400 for the job." Given that Sedwick also paid £200 out of his own pocket to hire the equipment needed to demolish the station, I certainly hope he got his money back in the end. So, what's the lesson to take away from this? Read your contracts, double check to make sure your boss isn't a con man? I'm not entirely sure. What we can say for certain though is that, as terrible as people stealing from railways is, you have to admit, Stealing an entire station without British Railways knowing is quite the achievement, and, if I do say, downright hilarious. Subscribe for more.